shall we get started?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, okay. So this is your sixth film, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I made before this one 3 fiction features and 2 documentary features, but they were as complex as fictions. So I guess, yeah, it's okay, that's it. Yeah, you're right.
So, and this film, you wrote the script, and it's about aging, and you never use the word dementia. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, if I was to use the word dementia, it would have to go to the vocabulary of one of the characters or maybe some of the medical personnel there. And I generally avoid those things. I mean, I don't want to pinpoint with my finger, this is what the movie is about. I mean, then I guess we wouldn't be making movies. We would be writing, I don't know, essays or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, officially, they both look like they have dementia. But the whole point of the movie, in my mind, is that uh, there is this medical stuff, what medical profession tells us what's wrong with us. And then there is human spirit and collaboration with nature that may have a different view on things. I respect medicine big time, but I don't think it's the only option for people. And actually, you know, I looked around. I went during even some little research for writing the script, and especially when we were looking for the location where to actually shoot this home for the elderly. And I don't know, I think medical profession has an upper hand there. And if you really strictly listen to them, and they are not so sure if they should listen to themselves either, the doctor and stuff. So I thought, you know, I'm going to give this guy a chance through appreciation of nature, which is smarter than all of us, and through emotions. So actually, the main question that the film poses is, can we overcome a diagnosis or illness with emotions? That's the question of that film.
Yes,
I hope at the end it's kind of clear that it's what it's about.
I'm going to ask you about that later, but I like that you didn't mention dementia. I'm asking this because I think probably my audience would ask this, and because we don't have any audience, I'm asking the questions that I think, you know, possibly my audience would like to know. But I think it's very smart that you didn't mention dementia. So my next question is about, I understand that your uncle was in a retirement home and that you learned a kind of wisdom there from your uncle and his environment. And it may have been your initial inspiration for your film.
Yeah, pretty much.
Tell us about the kind of, I think you used the word respect, that you learned something about respect from this retirement home. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I don't know. I mean, there is this kind of saying that is pretty generic already, that like, you know, that old people, as they age, they become kind of infantile, like they were kids, or they become kids again. I don't know about that. I mean, those people that when I was visiting my uncle, they didn't look like kids. They didn't behave like kids. They were not nearly, you know, that simple, but they somehow become simple in terms of preferences or what really matters in life. What matters in life, their family, their husbands, their wives, whoever come and smile at them, and they smile back at them. And that's actually what turns out to be more important than I'm rushing to a meeting. I have this obligation, work, whatever. I mean, hey, these things in the end don't seem to matter as much. You may have some huge career in sciences, in this and that, or you may be just a laborer, but in the end, you are this, you just try to come to terms with your life, and seems like what really matters is, were you in touch with people close to you? Did you appreciate them? Did you respect them? Did they respect you back? Turns out that that's what matters somehow. I don't know. I mean, I was returning some favors, if I would put it that way, but you don't necessarily return a favor to the person from whom you got it from years ago. I don't know, I get a favor from you, I return it to somebody you don't even know. I mean, there's got to be some little balance in life. So I've learned that, I don't know, I mean, my uncle was a doctor, and when I was a child, he was like always there. My mom would call him at midnight that Miroslav has, I don't know, high temperature or whatever, and in 20 minutes he was there. And out of that wonderful memories of this great, great guy, I decided when my cousin, I mean, during the war of the 90s in Bosnia, we all kind of spread around, and my cousin lives in Geneva, my aunt and my uncle lived in London, then my uncle got ill, and then it was kind of more handy and not as expensive to put him in a retirement home in Zagreb, and that's only like hour and a half from where I live in Ljubljana. So I said, okay, I'm closer to them than the two of you. I'll be the one visiting as often as I can. So, but I think you're referring to the atmosphere in that home. I mean, I'm trying to reiterate, like they just sit there and they wait for their kin, and they smile at you, knowing that you are somebody else's relatives visiting there. They appreciate that. You have this respect for what you do for your dear one, just up front. And then they are waiting for, there are those who are not being visited ever, or maybe that weekend or whatever. And they sit there and they're not asking you to cry for them. They just sit there and they are kind of glad that there are others being paid visits. I mean, there's some higher knowledge there that doesn't have to be expressed through some highbrow intellectual statements, whatever. They don't go into those things. They just sit there and see, how was your day? Let's have a walk. What have you eaten? I have eaten this, I have eaten that. I mean, you just talk about very basic things there, and somehow seems like that's what life ultimately is about. I don't know.
So I was thinking about, is it Sandy Pavlin, who plays Bruno so brilliantly? He's so distracted by his present life being there. He's clinging to his old life and his old memories and his dog that doesn't exist. He's kind of instinctual, imaginative, follows his impulses. It is kind of childish in the way that he is. And I wondered if you had ever heard of this phrase called puer aeternus. It's a French.
Oh, is that Latin or what is it?
It's French, puer aeternus, and for the female, it's called puella. It's something that we all have, both male and female child in us, a kind of Peter Pan character inside of us, which I think Bruno is so full of. He's such a child. I don't think of it as dementia. I think of him being fixated on whatever it is that interests him, he goes for.
Well, honestly, I mean, may I go ahead?
Yes.
Honestly, I don't think the problem is that such an older man behaves like a child. I think the problem is that we grown-ups don't behave as children anymore. I think that's a crucial problem because I mean, when you look at children, every single child is talented for acting. Every single child has an ear for music. Every single child is eager to play games or whatever. And as we grow, I mean, as we grow, not necessarily older, but as we kind of begin socializing, and when the rules of how do you cross the street, do you respect the red light or the green light, or whatever your parents tell you what you should be very aware of, what values they impose on you as something that you kind of got to worry about while you are studying and about your future life, career, whatever. I mean, we are losing a child in us. And a child in us is much more vital and much more open to whatever this life has to offer us than us as we grow up. I mean, we become cautious, we begin rationalizing a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And this guy is not necessarily becoming infantile, but he doesn't rationalize as he probably did 20 or 30 years ago or 50 years ago. He simply takes the life as it is and appreciates what is there to be appreciated. What is there not to be appreciated, he kind of walks by it. Now, these, I mean, I don't know, I did some research, but I must admit, I wrote some of these little episodes around the main character completely out of my own sleepless nights. I don't know if they are all that true to the diagnosis. I mean, I don't honestly know, I have to admit to you, how come he doesn't accept that his wife has died? He doesn't remember that she died, but when his daughter says that she did, he kind of, yeah, he's sad, but then a moment later, he says, why doesn't she visit me? In a scene later, she tells him that, hey, I mean, I cannot feed your dog, our dog, because you put him to sleep through this vet or whatever, I don't know, 20 or so years ago. And he says, oh, really? That long ago? But bring him anyway. I mean, I honestly don't know where that comes from. I mean, I didn't hear of it. I just kind of, you know, when you write, you somehow, you set up a character or characters and you have them interact. And after some 20 pages, you just follow them. I mean, they were guiding me through the whatever, and I was just listening to what he was about to say and putting it down on the page or on the computer. So, I think his resistance to the sad facts in his life is also some sort of livelihood, is also some sort of appreciation of, I mean, that only tells me that his emotion to his wife and his dog, even though they are no longer alive, he somehow extends their beings by simply taking them as living creatures. I mean, we all do that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it took me, when my dad has died, it took me good 2 years to kind of accept that. I was waiting for the guy to appear around the corner.
Call on the phone.
Well, I wasn't that.
I was waiting for my father or my mother to call me on the phone, or I wanted to talk to them, but they weren't there. So
there you go. And whenever I go back to Sarajevo, I go to Sarajevo often, and there are some streets or some corners or backyard of the house where we lived. I go there, and I mean, not really to kind of reminisce or whatever. I just go there. It's homey. And I feel like my dad is going to pop out from around the corner or from upstairs or whatever. So, I mean, you kind of accept rationally that somebody is no longer around, but actually they live through you, not necessarily through the memories, through those memoirs or whatever officially, how people kind of live on officially, but unofficially, but more emotionally within your own heart and soul. they are kind of around there for you. I mean, you haven't met a better person than them anyway. So why wouldn't you just celebrate them having been around and try to have them around to carry this emotion that you have for them? I don't know.
So Sanremo is quite different from your other films. I mean, for instance, Adria Blues, um, which you called once a tough, sweaty, shitty story. Um, in in this story, it's full of tenderness. And was this film kind of a big step for you, or a recovery for you, or a big change for you in compared to your other films, do you think?
Huh. I mean, I don't know. I'm not so much into being consistent. I'm not so much into being secure. I go for risk or insecurities or whatever you call those things. Uh, if I was a serial career person, career writer, director, I would say I take chances. But I don't do. I wouldn't even call I take chances. I mean, I just go for it. I felt something when I was visiting my uncle. That was like 6, 7 years ago, and it somehow stayed with me. And the guy passed away a couple of years after that. And I said to myself, I mean, it was such a strong impression that I gotta try to do something out of it. So I don't know. I just tried. Uh, it's not. I don't want to say that if I get a chance to make another movie, is it going to be about even older people? Is it going to be more tender than this one? Or I have no clue. I mean, I don't go for this kind of auteur consistency. I mean, my film before that one was about actors who fall for a role that they were researching so much that they decide not to play it. They want to live it. And it kind of arrives to some pretty serious and delicate, outcomes. The film before that you mentioned, Adria Blues, was about my kind of trying to bid farewell to this whole ex-Yugoslavia, and not only politically but socially, because I don't know if you're aware of that up in northwestern United States, but I mean, we went through this so-called, I don't know what you call it, communism or socialism. It was either way so-called that, because it was never truly that, unfortunately, went into this pretty vulgar version of capitalism. And in these parts, we call that transition years. So I was kind of curious to see, because I didn't have to be curious. I witnessed some people going through the transition very opportunistically, very successfully, as if they were just waiting for that. I saw some people that were crushed by the new, actually old system, and just couldn't somehow get through. And I thought I'll try to make a little palette of those different characters, pretty much all of them inspired by some people I was observing, some friends of mine, myself here and there. So I mean, I don't know if that has to do much with, you know, exploring actors, or exploring now old age and forgetfulness and emotions or whatever. I don't know what's next to come. I don't know. I just go for it. I mean, if I feel strongly about some subject matter, I mean, my next movie can be a love story of some fairly young people. Actually, I know there's something that I read that looks pretty. And it's about time I direct a movie based on a script that I didn't write, because ah I want to rest from writing.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you about the landscape itself, because this is a really beautiful place. The retirement home is a gorgeous place. I would like to live there. Environment around it is really beautiful. I was interested in the atmosphere of the home, and the area of where you shot. So tell us a little bit about where this place was.
Well, just a brief introduction. We did look around, like we had a look at like 20 retirement homes around Ljubljana or like all across Slovenia, because that seemed like a given thing. I mean, the story takes place there, so let's find one that's appropriate. But I don't know, they were not, I don't know, I was getting depressed because I don't know, it was a bit like, I don't know, industry in a way. I mean, I don't know, I didn't go for it. And then came this co-production with Italy, where if you get some considerable amounts of money from them, you got to spend it there. And the best way to spend it, and that's what they partly require as well, you got to have a certain amount of shooting days there. So they required so many shooting days that the only option for us to fulfill that was to shoot the main location there. So then we started scouting in northern Italy, and first couple of days.
You froze.
Let's go from where we stopped.
You were talking about the place that you shot and your co-production with Italy. And that,
Yes, so that was
obviously you must have shot in Italy.
Yes, so I guess I explained that. But then when we started looking for a location in Italy, I wasn't necessarily looking for a home or for a house that would be so beautiful. Not necessarily. I was looking for a place where our main characters would be subjected and exposed to nature. That was my main criteria. So in the end, we picked a house that was not a retirement home, that was some abandoned villa, and we kind of made it into a home. So, you know, I mean, if you looked at the facade from the back wall, which we barely ever shown, it didn't look that beautiful. I mean, even the walls will look pretty much run down. But yes, the grass was kind of freshly put there, planted, whatever. Then those machines with sprinklers, because it was in the script that this woman kind of likes to be watered by the sprinklers, which is a bit freaky because, like, I mean, why doesn't she just, you know, undress and go take a shower? But she somehow had this thing about that. I don't know how to explain that, but I wanted both of them to be into water. So during his initial escape, that we only later realized that it was escape, he immediately enters a stream the moment he runs into it. Then first time he sees her, she's being watered. Everybody, when the sprinklers start working, everybody runs away, they spread around, and she stays there eager to be watered by the sprinkler. Then I don't know, there are other waters in the film. The main one, actually, the theme of those collages that this therapist was asking them to make collages from was the water. So somebody was doing ships like him, somebody else was doing seas or rivers, and this woman was doing
Waterfalls.
So anyway, she dies eventually from some other causes, and he, poor guy, he's invited to the funeral and he tells them, I don't know, I don't like funerals. I think if he knew for sure that it was her, this woman that he got to like in this home, he would have gone. But then he spends, I mean, his beard grows, if you have noticed, so he spends a couple of months missing something or somebody, but he cannot really figure out who is he missing or what is he missing. That's at least the idea. And then he tries to escape, as he tried many times before, and this time somehow it works. And now we are plugging into the statement of this film, into what brought me to really make this film. He manages to escape, he kind of looks around, there's no guard to follow him, and he goes for something. Does he know what he goes for? I'm not so sure, but he follows some strong, overwhelming instinct that he cannot rationalize, cannot define, but he goes for it. He goes into the midst of nature, into some kind of shadowy, forest, not knowing really what he's looking for, but he's in the nature that he has appreciated throughout of the story, and the nature appreciated him. It's an exchange. And then he stops there, kind of lost in the middle of the forest, doesn't know the way out, and kind of lies down. It's snowy, it's freezing. I think he was about to freeze and maybe just die there. But then nature says, hey, I'm not going to let you go just like that. And the nature starts knocking off those trees, showing him the way, because the majority of the trees toward that sequence fall in the direction opening him the view toward a lake, another water, yet another motif of water. So the guy wakes up because those trees are falling all around him, and gets up, and there is again the squirrel, which is kind of a recurring motif, whatever, a leitmotif, whatever you call it. And then he goes down towards this lake. Does he really know? I don't think it's about knowledge. I don't think Einstein knew. He knew a lot. But did he discover theory of relativity by knowing what is coming up? I doubt it. We just go for things, and we have, of course, some knowledge, we have some senses, we have talent, whatever, and then this thing, rewards us for our struggles or whatever. That's how I look at it. I don't know. So anyway, he goes for the water, goes by this icy, lake, and then suddenly sees something. We kind of see that he noticed something significant. What is it significant for? He may not know yet. We recognize a waterfall, but it's frozen. So it's a different sort of variety of what he saw, and what we saw her doing as a therapy collage for this, thing. And he looks at it, and it's kind of familiar to him. And that's where dementia is confronted with the interaction between us and the nature. Because he stares at this waterfall and kind of smiles. And that's the end of the movie. I'm kind of sure that at that moment, his emotions toward that woman overcame the diagnosis of dementia. Because how could he have recognized the significance of that waterfall? Only because somewhere deep down, he must have remembered that this woman was all about that. So in this waterfall, he actually sees a sign of her and embraces it. And he has done it. His life is fulfilled. I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. But I have to say that I missed that, because your question about can the emotions between two people, as broken as they are, push them beyond diagnosis, I felt like I wasn't sure if I could answer that question with a yes or no. It seemed like—
Well, I offered you an answer now. I'm telling you, if your brains are completely shattered because of this diagnosis, call it dementia, call it Alzheimer, whatever, are you going to appreciate some kind of waterfall? I don't think you would. But if that waterfall signifies a person you loved or you appreciated during the last months or years of your life, if you recognize the significance of that waterfall as something more and higher, and that emotionally grips you more than any trees around that were falling around you, that to me means that you have remembered that woman and the dear moments with her, and therefore for that one moment you have overcome limits of what dementia says our limits are, or a human being. I mean,
yes, it makes absolute sense. And thank you for pointing that out. No,
My smoke.
worth the whole conversation.
Cool, cool. Do you mind if I light a cigarette?
Not at all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, you do live in Seattle for a while. Have you been living there for many years in Seattle?
Many years.
I'm honored to have my film playing in Seattle.
And
So,
I'm very happy to have your film play. And
thank you.
I felt like this year was such a tough year for everybody, you know, because of COVID and the virus.
It still is. It still is.
Yes. And I felt like when I saw your film, it was like, yes, something beautiful, quiet. You know, I usually like the really strange, crazy stuff, but somehow I was just in the mood for your film. I really loved it. So I'm glad that we could talk. Glad to meet you.
Nice meeting you too.
Today I meet you in Sarajevo. I want to go to this festival whenever we can go.
I wish you see my film someday on the large screen.
Okay. I hope
so wish for you.
I hope so.
For everybody.
I hope so. Okay. Goodbye. Nice.
Bye to you too. Take care.
Hope to see you again someday. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.